Dawn on a grey December day in 1981. One of Britain's most famous Victorian locomotives is coming back to life 74 years after being withdrawn from service. Patrick Stirling of the Great Northern Railway designed these engines in 1870 for one purpose only: speed. The locomotive was numbered 1 to reflect its rightful place in the legendary Railway Race to the North. Stirling's graceful 8-foot driving wheels were the key to the Great Northern's success, making it the fastest railway in the world in the 1880s. When York Museum decided to return number 1 to steam, the preserved Great Central Railway at Loughborough was a natural choice of location, a perfectly straight section of a former main line, ideal for showing off number 1 as she used to run. The Great Northern Railway's successor, the LNER, is represented here by 2 classic designs. The B1 mixed traffic loco, Mayflower, a type often used on the Great Central, sees more brasso now than it ever did in mainline service, while one of the N2 tank engines, so familiar to thousands of North London commuters, is prepared as standby engine. The loco shed at Loughborough is built across the former mainline track of the old Great Central Railway, the last of the great main lines to be built, opened as late as 1899, with its new London terminus at Marylebone. The Loughborough to Rothley section was acquired by the Mainline Steam Trust following closure of the line in 1969. Just 5 years later, in 1974, Loughborough Central saw steam passenger trains once more, a remarkable achievement by the Trust in such a short space of time. Although it has not been possible to retain the double track, the bed of the former Down Main can be seen on the left, steam runs with mainline engines have now become a reality. This is the return trip of the morning proving run before the start of the passenger service. Mayflower has been left at Rothley on standby, while the N2 returns the carriages to Loughborough, ready for the Great Northern single to start the service. At the Loughborough depot, number 1 is now receiving its final spit and polish before working its first public passenger train for over 70 years. John Bellwood, Chief Mechanical Engineer of York Museum, on the left, supervises the efforts of the Great Central Volunteers on some last-minute maintenance.
See whether any bloody oil be coming out of there, John.
This handsome piece of 19th century engineering, which some claim to be the most elegant ever designed, were placed in the capable hands of the Great Central Volunteer staff for the 1982 season. For a railwayman's view of the single, no one is better qualified than John Bellwood.
It's a very nice engine to drive. Fortunately, I was sort of brought up on Great Northern engines. Not that I'm old enough to have worked for the Great Northern Railway, but I was on the GN section of the old LNER, and so the pull-out regulator, which inhibits some people, is sort of second nature to me. Yeah. But you've got to watch it because it's a domeless boilered engine. You've got to keep the boiler water level fairly well down. You certainly don't want more than about half a glass of water, otherwise you get carryover of water into the cylinders. Yeah. And the other point is that we are running at a reduced boiler pressure in deference to the general age of the locomotive boiler, which means that you've much less margin for error. It blows off at about 110 pounds of steam, and about 90 pounds the brakes start creeping on, so you've got to keep it round about the 100 mark. So you need a fairly skilled fireman.
What's it like with only the single driving wheel? Doesn't it slip a lot?
Well, we gave it a trial run yesterday, and it certainly didn't slip anything like you expect from a Bullied Pacific, for example. And I suppose, really, apart from superheating, and being a bit bigger, there's not a lot of difference between this one and the last locos that were built for British Rail.
To mark number 1's return to steam, a special ceremony was held at Loughborough Station, attended by the head of the Science Museum, in overall charge of the National Transport Collection, Dame Margaret Weston. She waved a green flag to signal number 1 to start, and the 111-year-old engine made a stately entry into Loughborough Station. Dame Margaret was then invited to join the other guests on the train, who included Dr. John Coyley, keeper of the York Railway Museum. As a precaution against undue wear and tear, understandable for such an old locomotive, York Museum have limited the number of trips number 1 can make, and the enthusiasts and photographers were not missing a single chance to see it. The ride on number 1 is remarkably smooth. On the footplate, one is hardly aware of the typical sideways motion inevitable in a machine where the reciprocating parts are hard to balance. Enjoying a return to the footplate for this historic run was the fireman on number 1's 1938 centenary excursion, 76-year-old Harold Micklethwaite from Nottingham. The most impressive landmark on the railway is the Swiveland Reservoir, crossed by a substantial causeway with 2 viaducts. Among the famous trains that used to race across it were the Master Cutler on its way to Sheffield and Sir Sam Fay's luncheon car expresses to Manchester. It is hard to imagine that this leafy single track was once a main line that carried most of the traffic from Wales and the west of England to York and the north-east. At Rothley Station, present terminus of the line, Mayflower is on standby and by her mere presence contributes to the restoration of a main line atmosphere. The new Great Central Company are making determined efforts to restore the station to its original condition, making Rothley an excellent period piece. The relaying of tracks lifted by British Rail was a major task for the line's new owners, and the points at Rothley were an essential part of the work, enabling engines to switch round their trains for the return trip to Loughborough. An engine with just a single pair of driving wheels is obviously prone to wheel slip, so the gradient of the track could be a problem. Although the singles had a reputation for sure-footedness when running forward, they were not designed to go up hills in reverse, so the track out of Rothley had to be carefully hand-sanded for several hundred yards.
Oh, they didn't do so well for a second.
Running tender first now, the Great Northern Single now makes her way back to Loughborough. The elegant progress of Stirling's 8-foot wheels spinning along the main line symbolises all that was best in Victorian engineering, and to see her steam again in 1982 is a tribute to those concerned in restoring and running her.